Okay, let's dive right into this. Today we're breaking down what is literally the ultimate David versus Goliath story playing out in tech right now. On one side, you've got the absolute behemoths of Silicon Valley. We're talking companies sitting on $100 billion cash reserves. And on the other side, a startup that hasn't even hit the billion-dollar mark in total funding. But they're trying to completely rewrite how every single one of us accesses information online. We are looking at the playbook behind Perplexity and how exactly they are navigating an ecosystem that's just swarming with titans.
It's kind of the multi-billion-dollar question, right? How on earth do you beat a $100 billion giant like Google? It's the kind of bold, flashy premise that dominates the headlines. I mean, when you've got this massive corporate war brewing with heavyweights like OpenAI, Google, Meta, and Elon Musk's xAI just throwing endless compute and capital at the wall, you'd naturally think a smaller startup's daily obsession would be figuring out a direct kill shot. You'd assume every single board meeting is just a war room dedicated to stealing legacy market share.
Well, Perplexity's CEO, Aravind Srinivas, actually debunks that myth right out of the gate. He literally says, "We don't talk about how to beat Google, we just talk about how to grow Perplexity." When they sit down with their investors, the focus isn't on destroying the giant. It's just a very honest acknowledgement that legacy companies, they aren't going to just evaporate overnight. Instead, their entire strategy is laser-focused on their own sustainable growth, creating a product experience so undeniably compelling that users just naturally migrate over.
Which brings us to Section 1, the leaky bucket trap. So if the goal isn't a direct frontal assault, what exactly is the core philosophy driving this startup? Well, this framework is heavily influenced by one of their most prominent investors, Jeff Bezos. The story goes that before Bezos even took a meeting with them, he demanded a rigorous 6-page strategy memo. Standard Amazon practice, right? But when they finally met, he gave Aravind this incredibly direct advice. Just retain the users, don't be a leaky bucket. And this framework is just brilliant. In an AI space that is totally obsessed with massive user acquisition, everyone is pushing for as many signups as humanly possible just to flaunt those massive growth metrics. But Bezos essentially pointed out that hyper-growth means absolutely nothing if your customer experience is fundamentally flawed. If people try the product once and bounce, you're literally just a leaky bucket, pouring water into a sieve.
Let's actually slow down and unpack that for a second. Retention. It is the absolute true measure of an AI product's success. It's your ability to keep existing users highly engaged and constantly coming back. Perplexity's strategy essentially dictates that they shouldn't even aim for those crazy, unsustainable growth spikes. Instead, they need to ensure that as they grow, their retention rate is actually increasing alongside it, not just flatlining. Because at the end of the day, your underlying AI model matters way less to the end user than the actual day-to-day customer experience you're delivering.
All right, Section 2, redefining the search query.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how they actually plug that leaky bucket. You have to fundamentally redefine the behavior. 2.3 words. That is the median length of a Google search. Just think about your own habits for a second. When you hit up a legacy search engine, you're usually typing in quick, single-word facts or navigational commands. Things like weather, Amazon, Sachin Tendulkar age. Legacy search is perfectly, brilliantly optimized for quick web navigation. It's a muscle memory we've all spent the last 2 decades developing.
But over on Perplexity, 10 words. That is their median search length. It's a staggering contrast. Users aren't going there looking for a quick link. They're showing up with deep, complex, multi-layered questions. They aren't just searching for a name. They're asking things like, what is the specific core message of this person in this speech from this particular year? Or hyper-specific troubleshooting, like, my passport tore and I'm stuck outside the US. What exactly do I do?
And seeing these side by side shows exactly how a startup can carve out a massive ecosystem for itself. Perplexity isn't trying to displace your browser or duke it out for those 2.3-word legacy searches. That'd be a total fool's errand. Instead, by targeting this long-form, complex query behavior, questions that require multi-hop reasoning, meaning the AI literally has to connect the dots across multiple different sources to synthesize one single answer, they're building an entirely new user habit. And the real beauty of this? The legacy giants actually struggle to seamlessly integrate these complex, paragraph-long answers, mostly because it completely clutters their interface and directly cannibalizes their traditional ad revenue models.
Moving on to Section 3, the orchestration engine.
Look, to successfully answer a 10-word complex query without seriously frustrating the user, you need some heavy-duty back-end machinery. Here's how it actually plays out under the hood. First, the engine retrieves relevant links. Second, and honestly, this is their secret weapon for accuracy, it aggressively filters out low-quality domains. Third, the AI synthesizes a coherent answer from all of that.
And finally, it pulls the exact citations so you, the user, can actually verify the facts and keep the conversation going with full context. Doing all of this with minimal latency, making it feel instantly fast, is exactly what builds that immense user trust and keeps that bucket from leaking.
Next up, Section 4, Growth over Short-Term Revenue.
So, the product is super sticky, but what about the business model itself? Well, Perplexity is actively choosing not to obsess over turning a massive profit right this second. When you're fighting in an arena against companies holding $100 billion in cash, your financial priorities just have to look different. Their playbook is strictly focused on a few core pillars: relentlessly growing product usage and mindshare, maintaining margins on their paid users, actively lowering their costs algorithmically, and purposefully delaying premature profitability. This strategy essentially shields them from the innovator's dilemma. You know, that trap burdening the legacy giants who constantly have to protect their massive existing revenue streams at the expense of shipping radical new features. Perplexity, on the other hand, has the absolute freedom to just focus entirely on the user.
Which leads us to Section 5, a generational shift.
If beating Google isn't about bankrupting them or completely replacing them tomorrow, what does a win actually look like at a sustainable scale? It's all about the demographic horizon. The younger generation fundamentally lacks that legacy loyalty. Older generations grew up with a very specific, ingrained muscle memory, typing keywords into a white search bar and sifting through a list of blue links. But the next generation, they are entirely embracing conversational AI. They are totally comfortable talking to voice-to-voice systems. Their muscle memory isn't locked in yet, which creates this massive, once-in-a-generation opportunity to establish a completely new default utility for getting answers.
And this brilliantly illustrates Aravin's prediction. He believes the future of search won't be a 90% monopoly held by one single company anymore. It's going to be a split, highly diverse market. Maybe 40% goes to one tool, 30% to another, 20% to a third, and 10% somewhere else. Thriving in that diverse ecosystem, having an entire generation use your conversational product as their absolute default for complex problem solving, that is exactly what winning looks like in the new AI economy.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply human question to ponder. As these incredibly efficient orchestration engines take over the heavy lifting of parsing through information, there's a lot of worry out there about digital amnesia. You know, the fear that we'll forget how to research or remember basic facts, kind of like how Google Maps made us all forget how to read physical maps. But let's flip that perspective for a second. If AI acts as your external hard drive, freeing up your limited mental RAM, what are you going to load into your brain next? Will you use that freed up capacity to tackle far more creative, high-level complex problems? It's a fascinating turning point in human productivity. Take that thought with you, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.